Electricast.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
The kids are still at practice, and I have no idea what's for dinner.
You can get a rotisserie chicken and 2 sides for just $15 in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Who said that? Who's in my house? Don't play with me, because I'm not the one.
It's just your friendly Walmart announcer. This is a commercial.
Oh, okay. You were saying dinner for a family was just $15?
Yep, it'll be at your door by the time you get the kids home from practice. Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Subject to availability, restrictions and fees apply.
Now that was a helpful commercial.
Welcome to Missing the Point. I am Hollywood Rayshawn. Buchanan was my guy. Okay, Sizzle. Man, this is not going to be one of our more fun shows.
Yeah, I wish we were here under better circumstances.
Yeah,
Glad to be with you.
Same here, man. We've had a lot of great Celtics content over, the last several months. And, once again, you as an audience have shown us a lot of love. And, we pray that you show us love on this one as well. It is with a heavy heart that we speak about the passing of Bill Russell. He just passed away the other day. He, at the age of 88, he was on the Celtics for 13 years and, one, 11-time champ, 2-time champ in college. So just, what was your initial thoughts on, the passing, DK, and just what were your, do you remember when you first heard about, Bill Russell growing up as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my first thought was back to the most recent time I had seen him out in public, which was during that obviously great Celtics playoff run last season. And he didn't look great. He looked old. He wasn't moving great. As a tall man myself, not Bill Russell tall, but as a tall man myself, there is more shit to break. There's more surface area to break, and he was having a tough time getting out of his chair. And, it bums you out because, to sort of segue that into your next question, what do you remember from watching him as a kid? Now, obviously, he starts his career professionally in 56. So I didn't get the chance to watch him play live or during his era. But when you become a Celtics fan and you're sort of indoctrinated into the fan base, there's sort of a few key lessons you have to learn that there will be a quiz on later when you first sort of start out. And I think probably lesson 1 is probably Bird and McHale and that whole run. And that's the first 101 class you get put through. And then once you pass your A levels there, you sort of move on to learning about the older greats back in the day. Now, when I was a kid, I used to love the movie Conan the Destroyer that Wilt the Still Chamberlain is in, and he's awesome in it, and it's a fucking great movie, and him and Arnold Schwarzenegger fight. It's super fun. So Wilt was actually a guy I knew about first before being introduced to Bill, and that was sort of my context when being introduced to Bill. And the way it was sort of always explained to me, and it's kind of, there's some nuance to it now, but the way it was sort of always explained to me was that it was those were the two guys. They were the two giants of the sport, both literally and figuratively. But maybe Bill was a bit more of a competitor. And, he had maybe some things to say about what happened to between him and Wilt in that finals that they played against each other. Wilt was hurt. He wanted to come back in. Did he want to come back in? There was, whatever. I wasn't there. I can't speak to it. What I do know is that you then sort of learn and you can start to draw a line between the Celtics culture, the kind of basketball that we play, and the kind of winning basketball that we play. And you can draw a direct line to Bill Russell. His complicated relationship, I'm sure we'll go on to talk about with the city aside. I think having the winningest guy in basically any sport be part of your franchise was always cool as fuck. The fact that every time he got in an interview, he was always cool as fuck. The fact that the best Uncle Drew commercial was him being like, these kids have to learn that this game is about buckets. I still think about that line. You know what I mean? Because it is.
Right.
And the fact that, not everybody gets the coolest guy ever to be their guy, to be their old head, the guy that kind of got their franchise to where it is. And is such a participant in the culture. Was still such a participant in the culture right up until he died. Not everybody gets that. So just like my overall view of him, I think is kind of the grand master of our franchise, the reigning elder of Celtics basketball, and one of the first and best to ever do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, well said. I think so. For me, obviously, growing up in the inner city, we grew up in the '90s, and obviously the Celtics weren't a good team at that time. So that's a nice way to put it, right? So they weren't that good of a team. So I mean, you knew about the AJ Griffiths of the world or the Antoine Walkers, obviously, and obviously Pierce comes along. But yeah, you're right. The first indoctrination, like you hear about Bird, Mikhail Parrish, like that is the thing. Then you may hear about JoJo White, Dave Cowens, John Havlicek's, Charlie Scott's, whatever, and so on and so forth. Then obviously it gets back to the 50s and 60s. So you hear about Cousy and Heitson, and Sam Jones, Casey Jones, Bill Sharman, Zach Sanders. And, then it's like, oh, this larger-than-life guy, Bill Russell, comes up from University of San Francisco and, really turns around their franchise, right? He turns it around. And, my mom is a child of the 60s. And, she would tell me, how, it wasn't, games weren't really being sold out at that time, for people to come see the Celtics, which is wild to me, because they have to have a franchise. Like, could you imagine if we were living when they won 8 straight?
You're there every night. You're in the best seats in the house.
we'd have been. I mean, people may think we're unbearable now. We really would have been unbearable, If we were around when I'm winning not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, but 8 in a row, listen, I would have been the most inseparable person out here, by far. I'd have been talking crazy shit in the cafeteria, crazy shit, all that. It just would have been crazy. But yeah, I just remember saying, it wasn't always a fun time for him here. And as I got older, we found out more stuff. We'll get into that later on. But yeah, it was something where, it was you were able to hear about how great he was as a player. And then later on found out about how cool he was even outside of the Boston Garden at the time. So it's we're not going to see 8 straight again, right? We're not going to see that now.
Well, it's funny you say that. Right? It's there's this kind of, and this is a little bit of an aside, so I'll keep it short, but this debate's been coming up in the basketball world, which I know you're, just as plugged into as I am, about JJ Redick talks shit about Bob Cousy, whatever. And he's he was playing against, firemen, whatever. Okay. The thing is my issue with that kind of conversation, and usually it's done honestly in basketball terms to sort of try to disregard the Celtics amount of the Celtics titles that we have. And what I always try and say to people is you'd have to take that across everything that happened in the 50s and 60s, because if Bill Russell wasn't the winningest basketball player of all time, he would have set high jump records. He wanted to go to the Olympics for 2 sports, and this is a guy that, I don't know, maybe they're putting different shit in the Wheaties now, and maybe with nutritionists and personal trainers and strength and conditioning coaches and an advanced tactical knowledge of the game. Yeah, it's different. It's hard to compare, but where would we be without them? We're standing on the shoulders of these giants, when we're watching this sport. And these are people that had to take a game in its infancy and develop it and make it important to be 7 feet tall and be able to still run and jump, make, a place for that person, a place for a 7 foot tall man that can run and jump and do cool stuff, because football ain't it, Right. And they paved the way for the feats of athleticism and the kinds of things that we see players do today. And it's if you're Joel Embiid, you should be thanking Bill Russell every time you cash that $25 million check. It just, the reason why we're here is because of the people that came before us. And I'm sure that once they're playing with those NFL robots from the Fox broadcasts, and that those are the guys playing all the sports, we're not going to want to hear that our era wasn't shit because our guys bled actual blood, So
right.
I just think it's a silly argument. It's just so silly. It's never necessary. It's disrespectful, quite frankly. And these are also people, like you said, that were fucking fighting civil rights battles at the same time as being all-time great basketball champions. What are you guys doing nowadays? What are the basketball players of today doing? for the most part, fucking going back to their Manhattan brownstone and like tweeting. So like, whatever, it's all relative.
Right. And I said, yeah, exactly. That's food. That's a term that made it. That was our thing. It's all relative, baby. But no, that's the thing though. It's like, yo, he wasn't getting crazy buckets. Like obviously he was getting 18, 19 a game, but it's like, bro, they almost getting buckets and Chuck Taylors. It was giving people 20 and 19, 30.
It's like the last shoe I would wear to a basketball game.
That is Chuck Taylors. Like, so Daniel, you're losing, like you're not in his later years not being able to get up. It's like, that's why. When you're running around on Chuck Taylors, you're blocking shots. Yeah. There's a picture of him, like his leg is like way up in the air like this. And I'm like, wow, like he's really, and not even the high top shirt. I'm like, I'm wearing a low top.
I'm pretty sure it was like fucking lead in the water when he was doing that, I don't know what they were doing back then.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, smoking in the locker room, you name it. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, guys were working second jobs. Imagine that. Yeah. Guys were working second jobs. Like I know Tommy Heisen was a insurance agent when he wasn't playing. Like imagine that. Yeah, you're not selling out arenas, but you're going from arena to arena, even though it wasn't as many teams. But you're playing double headers on certain games, which they would never do now. But you're playing double headers, and they say, all right, what's the off season? Gonna go cut some grass and I'm gonna go to my HVAC business. Like that's wild to me.
Right. Some of these stories, it's like, especially in the Bill Russell era, like onward, and the stuff that he like faced. I mean, what's happening when you're flying into these towns in like across America with a 7-foot tall black guy, and like 11 other athletic looking dudes. And you're like, there's probably people freaking the fuck out. They were probably looking at them like the circus was in town at this point, and it's and this is something that they had to deal with whilst trying to be great at a sport that is not easy. I mean, it's just, you got to apply all this criteria to it.
Right. And that, so so let's get into that. Cause there's no easy way to transition into that, but that, here we are, right? Trust me, we're trying to make this as light as possible. But, there is some stuff that we let's have. So speaking of that, right? So there was, I think it was in 1961, it was a preseason game. They're traveling to Lexington, Kentucky, which is not known to be fond of people who look like yours truly, especially at that time. And,
for the folks at home, raised black. For the folks at home.
Yeah,
because it's not good radio.
If you're not watching on YouTube, guys look like us. So so I just think that they get there and Sack Sanders and I think either Sam Jones and Casey Jones were denied food at a local restaurant, because of the color of their skin. So they come back to the hotel. Obviously, they're fired up. They're pissed. Probably really hurt. Obviously, because that's a very unsettling experience. And, so obviously Bill Russell catch wind of it, they choose to boycott the game. And, it ties into what happened a couple of years ago, right? So obviously what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Well, obviously that Jacob Blake shooting, which we did an episode on early on. And, the players only chose to do, I think it was like one game they chose to boycott and not play that particular night. But it's like, they were on the front lines of this, right? So, just kind of dispute that. So it's like, just the difference between, it's like not knowing if you're going to make it home. Or, because like I said, you're going back to a mansion. Like these dudes were walking the streets, not knowing if they were going to make it home at times. So that was just wild to me,
I mean, I'm on record. I think we all are of being sort of like in agreement with what the players in the bubble did during that time. I think that they were in a literal bubble though, like a literal bubble.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's exactly like, well, you kids these days are in a bubble. It's like, I'm not saying, I would be very reticent to take away from the fact that like, it's not a big deal to not go out and play like in a multi-billion-dollar industry that like, and you're saying we're not going out, we're shutting it down. And I don't know, kind of credit to the league also, I think at that point by being like, cool, whatever, we get it. I mean, this is a predominantly African-American league and like, this is how you guys are feeling about it. So cool. So not to take away from that, but yeah, I mean, I think you put it perfectly when you said they're like literally on the front lines. Like if they boycott the game, and like how quickly does a mob get formed in fucking 1950s, 1960s middle America? You know what I mean?
Super quick, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you go out there and play for us. This is what blah blah blah. Like, one guy gets pissed off because he's not going to get paid that night for like working security at the fucking arena where they're supposed to play, and he goes and gets some of his friends, and all of a sudden you're on the fucking wrong end of a mob. Informed by ignorance and fueled by hate. And I think that you're well aware of that if you're Bill Russell and the Celtics in that era. And I think that I think it takes some mighty fucking stones to do something like that. And I think that people recognize that. I think that right up until the players in 2020 boycotting a game because of police brutality in general and the conversation that was going on at the time. But at the same time, like, other people participating in civil rights throughout the 60s and 70s and beyond are going like, well, they're right there on the fucking front lines. Like, the fucking guy flying their plane out of here might be a fucking card carrying racist. They don't know. So right. It's inspirational, like that word's tossed around a lot, but it's to use it less in the sense of like, I'm inspired by this amazing story, and more in the sense of like, I draw from experiences of people that are in the same boat as me, that are making decisions that are scarier maybe than the circumstances I'm in. So I might as well do something also. Right. And I think that like, that is what it is to be a leader in movements like that. And I think it's so cool that he was the Celtic and doing shit like that. You know what I mean? Because look, I mean, at the end of the day, like, the Boston has a really complicated relationship with race because of the busing stuff, because of, experiences players have even today have come to the Garden, which, I wish that wasn't the case. Obviously, experiences that Bill Russell had of just being like straight hated, even though he was a Celtic, which is difficult for me to wrap my head around now. But like, I mean, I guess it makes sense if it's 1958.
Right.
You're a Boston fan and you're giving Bill Russell shit. Like, who are you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think his daughter came out with a statement recently, but I guess when Chillers on the road, and they obviously they would stay home, they wouldn't come out with the family. Like, that's tires getting slashed. I know. I think the story about someone sitting in his bed, which that to me, that's equivalent to getting spit on. Like, shit like that. Like, I'm liable to go to the truck, and that to me, it's unbelievable. So, and I'm sure there's many other stuff that's on the surface that we haven't even heard about, right? And it's crazy because obviously it wasn't just him, but obviously with him being the star of the team, him being outspoken, which definitely was not a thing. Like, say, obviously once again, the Joel Embiids, the LeBron James, the Charles Barkley's, like, a lot of those guys that have been able to be outspoken about race and just whatever they want to talk about in this world, and in this media, on this media outlets, not Draymond Green of the world, like, they need to be thanking guys like Bill Russell, because he really was a pioneer for people that was like, look, this is not right. I'm going to speak on it. And if y'all got a problem with it, I'm going to keep talking about it until, we see a change. But, I want to, because we've danced around the part that obviously, it was good to see a guy that was on the front lines, being in the Celtics uniform, being in the city of Boston, that has been racially charged at times. But I want to speak to the relationship between him and Red, right? Because obviously, Red drafts the first, black guy in NBA history, named Shaq Cooper. He played here for a while in Boston, same year as Bob Cousy. They came in at the same time. But obviously, his most famous pick ever will always be, Bill Russell. So lost out of Larry Bird. So I just want to speak about how important do you think it was that Red Auerbach was his coach at that time? Because I don't know if anyone else could have been in that position. So, what are your thoughts about, Red Auerbach as his coach and his confidant at that time?
Well, I think it's kind of a weird thing to say, but like, stay with me on this. I think the thing that Red did in that scenario that was unorthodox wasn't getting a black player. The thing that he did that was unorthodox was deciding that a big man was going to be his defensive focal point on his team. And he saw Russell's toughness and rebounding and his ability to kind of have a giant basketball IQ in the position that he's in. And he sort of changed the center position with him, because if you'll remember, I mean, you don't have to remember because you weren't there, but if you've been reincarnated back from somebody that watched basketball in 1953,
right?
The point forwards and the centers, those were guys that scored. That's the way it sort of was back then. And I think it was like an unorthodox move for Red to put Bill in that position. And I think that to find a guy as talented as Bill Russell to sort of move him up in the world as, one of the greats of the game, and do it in that unorthodox way. And also let him be him a little bit, like let him express himself. I think he did that with all the players. That's great. I mean, look, I didn't know Red Auerbach personally. He was a guy in the 1950s. I would be very unsurprised if around a steak dinner with like 5 other white dudes, he didn't say some shit in his time. I mean, I have no fucking clue, but this is just sort of how it works a lot of the times when you get, there's nothing more dangerous than 5 white guys alone in a room. It's like not a room you want to fucking be in because they're either like deciding what country to invade or they're making racist jokes. But my point is I think the kind of coach that Red was, I think he's instrumental in Bill becoming who he is from a basketball sense.
Yeah, no, I mean basketball sense, but I mean but even letting him play their style, and obviously yes, you don't get to where they got to without really his defensive prowess, right? Obviously, Kuzi was pushing the ball.
He D's up Will.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's another thing too. Before we get back into what his dynamic with him and Ray, it's like for those to say, well, man, those guys that play nothing. I know you kind of touched on it, but I'm like, yo, you had Bob Pettit, Dolph Shays, Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, Hal Greer. Those are just a few that come to mind. Nate Thurman. Like, there's a guy that come to mind, and I'm like, yo, these dudes could get buckets in their days. So to say that they played against, it was only plumbers, only salesmen, it's like, yo. Dudes was like Elgin Baylor specifically, and Tommy Hanks spoke about it too. This dude was getting 30 a night and was the original MJ.
Right.
Like, was once again, and listen, I want you to understand, getting 30, and I keep saying this, getting 30 in Chuck Taylors is no easy feat. You go out there, once again, you're in Cali, so I know they wear a lot of Chuck Taylors out there. But I'm like, go to Santa Monica Pier. Go do a run and shoot out there. Go put on some Chuck Taylor and try to get 30 out there. I'll
do you one better. I'll do you one better. Put on a pair of Chuck Taylors and go to a hoop by yourself and time how long it takes you to get 30 points.
Yeah,
like maybe if you have a strategy, where you're just hitting layup after layup and you're trying to catch your own rebounds. Like, but that's not fun. You want to take the ball out and shoot it a couple times, and then it bounces off the rim and it goes away, and you got to run after it. Tell me how long it takes you to get 30 points. It's not easy.
Yeah,
in any era.
Unreal, man. So it's just I'm gonna keep belaboring that point because that was really
true. Those are
it's unreal. And I want people to, very uncomfortable. But I want people to understand, like, it's funny because like I said, my mom, child of 16, she's like, my mom got a bunch of Converse, but I'm like, I get it. She grew up on Converse, but I'm like, yo, like, how do y'all walk around in these like there's nothing? Like, I'm sorry, like it's out of control.
Like paper.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. But no, so anyways, let's back to Bill and Red's dynamic. So, obviously, draft him, he lets him kind of be him. But then, I feel like their relationship was a lot about creating history, and that's what Red was about, right? So once again, drafting Chuck Cooper, then you get, they were getting all the best black players and all the white players. Like,
right.
He was like,
Red just wanted to win.
Yeah, Red just wanted to win. And I'm like, that's what I loved about him most. But then in 1966,
the coaching thing,
at the winning issue, the coaching change, right? So, Bill says, you know what, I'm stepping down as head coach.
And apparently Red tells Bill first. He tells him first that he's going to retire, like according to legend, and says like, I want you to be the coach. And Bill says no, right? And he goes, okay, well then let's make a list of like 5 people we think would be a good coach. And if there's any matches, we'll go to that guy. And they couldn't find any matches. And Bill was like, I don't know, man. I've seen the toll it takes on you, like being a coach. But like the fact that Red's like talking him into it, he's talking him into it. Like, look, you and I have had conversations about how like representation in the coaching position, specifically in the NFL, isn't where it should be. It's really easy to cite examples of like the kind of leash that like the Steve Nashes of the world get compared to like, who's the example you always use? Not Doc, but you always say.
I'm talking about Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis, one of them.
What's his name? The guy who commentates with Van Gundy now. You always say he got a fucking.
Mark Jackson.
Yeah, Mark Jackson always get. That's right. You always said Mark Jackson gets a fucking. Didn't get enough of a shot. Right. In Golden State, which I think is true. I think if you put Steve Nash in there in the same circumstances, I wonder if he gets an extra 2 years to try to build that same thing.
Oh,
however, it's a hell of a lot farther than it would have been if Bill Russell doesn't become the player coach, and if Red doesn't hand him those keys, and if he doesn't then do a really good job at it. You know what I mean? Like, the problem with becoming the first woman anything, the first black anything, you have to be twice as good, 3 times as good as your counterparts, because if you fuck it up, everybody goes, look, they can't do it. Look, they can't do it. You need a white guy for that role. You know what I mean? It's obviously ludicrous, but it's what people do, what idiots do. So to then, you gotta go be Bill Russell at it. You know what I mean? Which is, thank God.
Right. But that's when I think even the civil rights thing could seem to take off, right? Because obviously, he coaches there for 3 years. They win another 2 as him being a player coach. So they went into as him being a player coach. Probably the most famous one was winning in 1969 against the Lakers. Don Nelson that shot that bounced the 6th of the year before. Will got his first one. And Don Nelson hits that game when the shot that bounces up and it hits down.
But Bill's still getting fucking 20 rebounds a game at this point.
Crazy. And at 35 years old, we just see Al Horford do damage in this year's playoff. But
but that's 2022 35.
Right.
1967 35 is you've been around people smoking fucking Red Arrow bullet cigarettes your whole goddamn life, and you're drinking whiskey to help you sleep. It's a different era, man. I'm telling you.
And you're dealing, and here, once again, this is serious. I don't want to laugh about this, but and you're dealing with bullshit in
the
community.
Sure.
Actually, not even just in your community. Everywhere you go, which is why he ended up moving up to Seattle and landed on his life. Because it was just like, Boston was not kind to me in that regard. Actually, I had no idea. Obviously, like we weren't around, obviously, but I had no idea.
But how do you feel about, like, just to do a quick aside on like the city of Boston and that being kind of cast in that role? I mean, you live in the city, you've grown up in this area your whole life. You're black. Is there a sort of like, well, I know how to move through Boston sort of thing, or is that, but like, because to me it's like, well, we're also a city of like more colleges per capita than anywhere else in the world. So there's like young, like people being educated, right? Who like aren't acting that way. We're also a city in the Northeast where, like, we're on one hand a cultural hub, and on the other hand we have this thing which isn't outwardly untrue. I mean, it's a thing that isn't fueled by fucking events. And you can say, oh, it's just a few idiots or whatever, but the expression isn't a few bad apples make the rest of the bunch fine. It's a few bad apples spoils the barrel. So everyone's fucked if we're like letting this happen. So what's your experience been like in that sense? Like, do you think Boston is that city, or do you think, what do you think?
Yeah, I do think that there's moments when that does rear ugly head. So we've seen it with Adam Jones, who played for Baltimore. I know Barry Bonds has spoken on it. I know, obviously, LeBron spoke on it, most recently. And so I do think that stuff is valid. As someone who worked at TD Garden, or who works at TD Garden, I should say, I have seen moments up close. I've been on the floor when they have gone at athletes. And it's not always tasteful. It's not. I'm not going to say that it is. I'm someone who is a metro prodding, meaning I'm a kid that lived in the city, but went to school in the suburbs. I went to Belmont. Shout out to Marauder Nation. And there was times growing up when I felt like, I said, well, damn, I felt like I received more backlash in actually the inner city than I did even out there. But what I didn't realize was
since cities out there.
Yeah, exactly. But it was hidden racism, right? So whether it be a comment about my hair, or comment about the clothes I had on, or once again, you would sit there and talk to me about 50 Cent and Richard Died Trying, just to put in context. Wow, 2002 was
I mean, we all love that album.
Sure. But I'm like, once again, but I'm like, we would talk about Get Richard Died Trying, or talk about when the College Dropout came out. But it's just like, oh, you want to hang out afterwards and go ahead? It's like, oh no, well, I can't. We can't hang out type thing. But you want to speak about the culture. So that was kind of crazy. In the same breath, shout out to the few that did. So I think about my guy Andrew Duvall. Think about my guy Eric Burson. Bernie, what's up, baby? You made it on the show, dog. But I think about 2 kids like that always opened their house to me. Their parents were so kind to me. But I do think that. And you said
almost
you
rather
have
already. Somebody say it to your face in the fucking city.
Yes, because that's the biggest thing I think about just up north in general, as opposed to like I lived in Florida. It is out there in the open. They don't fuck with you, you're gonna know. And although that's scary to encounter, I'd rather that all day because I know exactly where we stand. Don't come around, put your arm around the proverbial arm around me. Don't be my friend. Don't try to embrace me. Don't do that. And then behind the scenes, you're calling me every racial slur under the sun.
Right.
So that to me is where I think a lot of that happens up here. I think for him, because he lived in a different time, obviously, they were saying that shit to his face. They were saying it to his wife. They were saying it to his kids. And obviously, I'm pretty sure that he had many moments where it's like, yo, if you want to come at me, remember that, once again, not making light of this, but like, I'm a man, I'm for like, I'm pretty sure he was like, yo, if you want to come at me, then come at me. But
right.
Don't try my family. Don't try those that are my loved ones. So, but in the same breath too, I do think, I felt like I did know how to move around, but I mean, I'm thankful that I haven't experienced too much. Once again, that's in my face. And once again, it might have been a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but I haven't experienced a lot of racism in my face. Thankfully, a lot of it's probably been hidden and stuff that I either knew about or didn't know about. But
or you look back later and you go like, oh fuck.
Yeah, like certain things you remember, like okay, like especially with the hair. Once I got braids, it was a whole different thing. Like I had the short hair, it was cool, but it was like, oh, like, is this your real hair or is this
You're
that?
like, oh, thanks. All of a sudden, I fucking fit the profile.
It's like, oh, like okay, like great, like so stuff like that gets a little crazy, but.
But you're saying essentially like, I mean, you can't necessarily deny that like the city has its issues with it, but don't pretend like that doesn't mean that like it doesn't exist insidiously somewhere else also, I mean,
I'm glad you said that too. Cause I feel like, and once again, and if this becomes a clip, so be it, whatever, but and I feel like I'm speaking for both of us on this, even though you're on the West Coast, Tupac, can't believe you don't jump with him. No, it's just like, don't make Boston out to be the most racist city in America.
Yeah.
And I want that on wax. I'm that with this going on now with his passing, and then obviously what LeBron said a few weeks ago, it's kind of gave people, this is not the most racist city in America. And we're not going to say that like that. Like, and once again, yes, and it's not about, oh, well, are you just saying that one's better than, no, I'm not saying about no one's better than the other. I'm just saying, do not make it seem like this is the worst city of all time.
You heard it here first, folks. Boston, not the most racist city in America, just the worst at hiding it. Just the worst at hiding.
You know what I'm saying? Like
everywhere is like this.
I'm like, you got folks out here that got hung. I'm talking, once again, we want to get real. People that got hung, people that got burnt on fire, for like real shit. So I'm just like, what are we talking about?
It's like the same thing of like, the conversation that came up, especially during 2020, but like it's always been happening of like the sort of insidious racism in like the education system. Like I remember learning about the Tulsa race massacre, which like Tulsa, I think you're like in the fucking lead for this, by the way, for like having a real conversation. But I remember learning about that because I'm watching like Watchmen on fucking HBO, and I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, oh, it's like a sci-fi thing. They're creating like an alternate universe, like an asshole. And then we look it up. Right. And it's like, oh shit, this shit really happened. Like, then immediately, like, I think a lot of people, you get mad that like you weren't taught about it. Like, why was this not in any of the units or whatever?
Right.
And then you start to realize like, oh yeah, like there is this sort of the sort of insidious nature of this, which might actually be more important to talk about than like what a drunk guy yells at a basketball game. You know what I mean? It's like still not okay. I mean, obviously. And like, the thing is, I wouldn't want this to be misconstrued as like, Russell Westbrook should have to go to work and endure this bullshit. Like, obviously not. Like, of course not. But to your point about casting Boston specifically in this light, and especially in regards to the guy we're talking about here. Yeah, I mean, he had to fight this fight. Did he have to fight the fight because he was in Boston? Yeah, a little. Did he have to fight the fight because it was 1958? Yeah, a little. Did he have to fight the fight because it wouldn't have mattered if it wasn't Boston and it wasn't 1958? He would have still had to fucking fight the fight. So.
Right.
It's sort of a thing that exists. And like, I think to try and sum it up or like put it in a fucking package, like a city or a group of people or anything it's sort of detrimental to the conversation in general. Cause it's like, well, sure. Okay. Like, sorry about those assholes at the basketball game.
You didn't hear stories about stuff happening with Pierce.
Right.
You hear stuff about Walker. Yeah. I never heard people like Kenny Anderson say something or Adrian Griffith or, I never heard
something to Kevin Garnett. Say something to Kevin Garnett. Let's see what happens.
Perfect example, right? So a perfect example, and I want to say this too. I do think there is some to try to differentiate, right? I feel like there are some. I see that I was there. I was on the floor. He walked by me. It was awesome. I do feel like there is some people that are white that say, well, there's some black people that I can't stand, but you're not one of them. I know that's just it. That's just that. No, all just all jokes aside, that's something that's been said to me. It's been said to me that, well, we all fucked up. It's like, you don't act like those, you're this, you're that. It's like, so, I'm one of the good ones.
Well,
gotcha.
what they're really saying is, what they're really saying, the kind of the problem with what they're saying is like, you're not one of the people that I've completely stereotyped in my head and I know nothing about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I've decided on this
exactly.
group. But now that I know about you as a person, you're fine. And that they didn't put the gap together. Like maybe this group you have in your head doesn't really exist.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah, that's
right.
crazy though.
And yeah, again, and insane. But no, I want to go back to Bill, because I know we went off, but that part was necessary to bring up. And I hope that someone got some education in that, because that's what we're here to do as well. He takes over as coach. Then the Vietnam War begins, right? And there's a famous boxer. I'm bad. Yeah. I'm pretty. I'm the baddest man on the planet. That Muhammad Ali. He'd already his name had already got changed and catch the plate to Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. And they were calling him draft dodger, and just once again every name under the sun. Yeah. And Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I believe, and
by that point,
I feel like I'm missing it. But those are the guys that were up there, supporting him. So, and once again, he's coach of the Boston Celtics at this moment. They're still winning. They're still winning championships at this moment. Mm-hmm. Still dealing with that. But did all he could to help out a friend in that moment, because there's pictures of Muhammad Ali coming up to we now in Boston know as shout out to Slades. Y'all need to change down prices of your wings. But shout out to Slades. Bill Russell used to own Slades back in the day, but now Slades is a nice little restaurant down in the South End district of Boston. So yeah, I just thought it was awesome that he still had all that stuff going on and still made time to look out for other Black athletes and just other Black people in general that were going through what he was going through, and chose, once again, you can always sit back. Every Black person or something wasn't talking. Zach Sanders wasn't always talking. Casey Jones wasn't always talking. Sam Jones was always talking. It takes a special person to lead, and everyone cannot be on the front line. Some people do stuff behind the scenes. Maybe that's what those guys did, but I'm thankful that he chose to say, you know what, I'm using this platform as one of the biggest athletes of this era, maybe of all time. Eventually, maybe he didn't know that then, but that's what he ended up growing into. But I mean, let's be real, he definitely got more love as he got older. Same thing with Muhammad Ali. They did not love them when they were young.
Of course,
once they got older, it was like, oh, you're this beloved figure, you're this, you're that. It's like, no, the video says otherwise. The sign outside my house say otherwise. The slash tires say otherwise. You know what I'm saying? The gas lit bottles you throwing it through the windows say otherwise. The 12 gauge shotgun that you have outside my daughter's room says otherwise. So it's like let's not get it twisted and forget where what it was. And but like I said, they both became beloved figures as they got older. But and like I say, it's unfortunate, but like I say, it is what it is. But that's just how it was. And some things have changed, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, I feel like the kind of juxtaposition, especially between a guy like Bill Russell and a guy like Muhammad Ali, is funny because as kind of ostentatious as Bill Russell could be on the court, I think he was always sort of a soft-spoken individual. I think he led a lot with his actions. I think that he, especially as he got older, the kind of elder statesman role that he took on. I remember so clearly, like he basically like fixed the Shaq and Kobe feud, right? Like it's like wading in as like the ambassador to Israel and like fixing their fight with the Palestinians at that point in basketball history,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like he wasn't in a time where so many things could be so and I say this as someone looking back on a time I wasn't there for, but I can only sort of look through the lens of the historical facts as presented. But in a time where clearly anything could be inflammatory if you were a black person. Anything out of your mouth, especially someone that was like in a prominent role, you know, because that's another element of racism too, right? Where it's like, oh, he only has that job because blank, 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 right? And it's like, oh, I didn't get that job because blah, 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 you know, affirmative action, blah, blah, blah. Like I've just heard these conversations going on, and it's like, well, not that guy, because actually he's 7 feet tall and he can jump over your head, and that's why he has that job, right? So it's this sort of thing of like become completely unflinching in the face of this criticism because you're undeniable, you know? And I think like Ali had that accomplishment as well. Like, I think that he just got up there and beat the fucking brakes off everybody. So it's like, well, I don't know, fight him then. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do about it? You know? So I think you have like at this time, you have the sort of the intellectual branch of this movement. This isn't to say that Ali and Bill Russell weren't intellectuals, but you know, you have the Malcolm X's and you have the Martin Luther Kings, but then you have this other side to it where it's like, well, these people have risen to prominence, not just in the black community. Like they're not pastors at a black church or, you know, like organizers in a black community. They're on your TV and they can run and they can jump and they can fucking do cool shit. And your daughters think they're cute. And it's like, they're fucking here to stay. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can fucking do about it. Like they're unconquerable in that sense. Like they look like these giants of men, you know, like Muhammad Ali was a heavyweight fucking boxer, dude. The dude was walking around at like fucking 265 with like pure muscle in the 1960s. Like nobody looked like that. You know, black, white, or whatever. Like these dudes were walking around as new specimens of athletes. And, you know, you can talk a little bit about what then happened in the 70s and 80s and the way that I think people made that more insidious, with like the joke we always make of like, well, he's the IQ guy and like he's the athlete and like all that bullshit, whatever. But at the time, I don't know if people knew how to kind of comprehend the Bill Russells of the world, you know? And
truth be told, they still don't.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, you know, that paves the way for guys like Kareem, who are coming up in a time where, you know, you can go and get your fucking 25 a night, but you can also go home and you can educate yourself on things. And like when a microphone's shoved in front of your face, you like speak, you know, you speak very intelligently on these subjects. And, you know, like we talked before, you got to be like twice as good as the guy that like might have gotten your job or whatever. It's like, yeah, these guys are paving the way for the next generation and the next generation, the next generation to be able to sort of just keep elevating and, you know, being given these platforms. I just think it's fucking cool. And I just like, Bill Russell's so cool, man. Like everyone's sad that Bill Russell's dead. Everyone's sad. It's not just like we're a Boston Celtics fans.
Universal thing.
You know, we're Boston fans. Where you saw on the internet, all of social media, people, you know, Barack Obama being like, this is what this dude was like. I met him a couple times. He was cool as fuck. You know, basically said it in like Barack Obama speak, but like he was basically being like, that guy was fuck. This sucks. Like, you know, and that's what everybody was sort of feeling because, you know, I mean, all the guys that hated him because he was black are dead now. So that's a positive. He probably outlasted fucking all of them because he was a pro.
Oh, I mean, for sure. I mean, I'm like, 88 years. I'll tell you that's a long time on
that's
on
damn
Earth.
good.
But, you know, but before I get back into, you know, the Celtics stuff with him, I want to give a charge to black athletes around the world, right? Well, there's two guys I'm gonna bring up. These guys weren't stars, but they played in the NBA in the late 80s to like mid 90s. So that's Craig Hodges, who you've seen him on The Last Dance briefly, and then Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who a lot of people know from the 90s as Chris Jackson from LSU. Yeah. Played on the team with Shaq and so on and so forth. So had a decent career in the NBA. The reason why I bring those two guys up, those are two guys who became very militant in the NBA and saw what was going on and was calling out, calling out the oppressor, so to speak, right? And essentially got blackballed because they were calling out, right? So they wasn't going to blackball to Bill Russell because Bill Russell was a star. They wasn't going to blackball Jim Brown because even though he was black, he was a star. They wasn't going to blackball. I mean, they blackballed Muhammad Ali to a certain extent, but eventually they knew, you know what? This guy is a draw. And we don't get Ali Frazier, we don't get Ali Foreman, we don't get Ken Norton, we don't get all those
so many fucking years off him. No, they took so many years off.
Oh yeah, they took 3 years off his career. Crazy. You know what I'm saying? In his prime,
like that, right in his prime. You know what I mean? Like
still comes back and it becomes world champion. So Ali, Boombayah. You know what I mean? Oh, great, love that movie. But
I love it. Yeah, we can do a whole separate Muhammad Ali podcast if you want. I'm here for it. I'm read up. I've read up.
Yeah. So as soon as you come back, bro, we got to know. But so to me, I'm imploring like I said, and it can't just be LeBron. I think about guys, he's retired, but I think about guys like D Wade. I think about I'm trying to think of names off the top of my head, but I'm like, just guys that are prominent figures that are African American. Once again, when I ask you to put together marches, when I ask you to build all these different communities, which would be dope, that's great. But when these issues arise, whether you're using Twitter, whether you're going on IG Live, whether you're using Spaces, like whatever platform you want to use, you need to speak up on these injustices, and not just in the moment when it happens, but periodically. So whether you're setting up foundations, like you have to let your resources work for you for the benefit of others. It's not just about you. Because once again, role players, and once again, and this is not a knock on who I'm about to say, but it's just a fact that he's a role player. Although Grant Williams is someone who is super articulate, someone that I think is a hell of a speaker, hell of a young man, they're not going to listen to him the same way they listen to a Jaylen Brown or just Tatum. Yeah. And it's just like, that's what I mean. Like, Jaylen Brown's about it. So let me not, you know what I'm saying? That's not why I brought it. Like, Jaylen Brown is about that life. Malcolm Brogdon, who we just got traded for, is also about that life. So
would you extend
they want the front lines? You know what I'm saying?
Would you extend that same mission statement to guys in leagues like the NFL though? Because I feel like,
yeah, for sure.
You look at the Brian Flores of the world, like you get fucked out of like your dream job,
right? And that's also the problem. But if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. Yeah, and sure. I know, and I understand at the end of the day, you have to take care of your family. So I get it. I'm not asking you to give up your livelihood, but at the same time, if you can't say something publicly because you know the backlash, fine. Start up a foundation, work on some community centers, do motivational speeches when you're talking on forums. Like this, there's many other ways to be effective in this time, because there's so many different platforms to have your voice heard, whether it's on the front line or behind the scenes. So yes, that's just across the board. But we also, in the same breath, we also need, once again, we're having this like this, we're black and white. We need to have more conversations like this where it's being put out there and not shying away from it. And once again, that's why I love about what we did about the show early on. We talked about Jacob Blake. I figured the other gentleman that we did a show on as well. But that's what we did. We didn't shy away from these moments early on. I mean, hell, we had a whole argument about me. I remember being asleep. And you texted me, he was like, "Look, you got to be on this show. You got to be on this fucking show, right?"
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
I was like,
but here's the thing, right? But here's the thing, right?
But I'm coming.
This is a thing, right? Because it's not, you got to be on the show because you're our fucking token black friend. It's right. You got to be on the show because you have a fucking perspective that we don't have. And then 2 weeks later, Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo do the most tone deaf fucking podcast in the history of podcasting because there's two white dudes talking to each other and they have no perspective. Right. And they mean well, I'm sure, but like they fuck up and they have to say they're sorry. And it's like, yeah, well, you know what? It's not really, because like a lot of the requests I think coming from these movements is just involve us in the fucking conversation. You know what I mean? Like, don't make these decisions, based on what you think we want as a community. Don't make these decisions and these these sort of moves and conversations like we're not there. You know what I mean? And it's like, right, I think exactly. That's, in the when it comes to athletes, like, look, the NBA is uniquely suited. Was sort of my point about the NFL thing. It's like you brought up The Last Dance. Watch The Last Dance. The Last Dance is essentially, it dances around this a little bit, but it's essentially about how Black culture and basketball in the 90s were one and the same. And they intertwine and they speak to each other and one informs the other. And Michael Jordan's this fucking unbelievable, phenomenal athlete, like complete like freak that's like no one's ever seen anything like that before. And he's winning all these championships and like, but it's like, oh, it's accepted, like everybody's wearing the fucking, the what would now be like vintage fucking Bulls hats. Everybody's wearing the fucking starter jackets. Everybody's pumping up their Nikes, right? It becomes a springboard to bring elements of Black culture into the zeitgeist, right? Like for everybody. But people are still taking that and leaving like, I don't like Black people. You know what I mean? So it's like, You can't really have your cake and eat it too. You can't listen to KRS-One one day and then be like making fucking racist jokes with your friends the other day. It doesn't make any sense, right? So you as an athlete, you've seen eras of your sport. I think this is what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've seen eras of your sport affect change. Right. It's this like keeping politics out of my fucking sports thing. It's bullshit because that's just what people say that don't want progress to be made. And like, it's there, whether you like it or not. It's there
Right.
if 70+% of your league is black. It's there if part of the culture is of your sport is black. If not all of the culture of your fucking sport is black, if we're being quite frank,
Right.
it's there. It's already there. You're either choosing to amplify it in a positive way, or you're choosing to ignore it because you're scared. And like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't cash those checks from the NBA on the backs of people that are going to go outside, and when they're not in the Garden or, you know, in the Staples Center or whatever, they're going to get treated like shit. It just doesn't make sense. So
Right.
I would put that same charge that you put to athletes in the NBA to fucking white athletes. You know, I think there's some of them that do speak up. I've liked a lot of what JJ Redick said before he insulted Bob Cousy. Now he's not welcome in Boston anymore, obviously, but but I've liked a lot of what he's said about it. You know, I mean, these are guys that spend a majority of their life around people of color in general because of the thing that they do for a living. So they should fucking know better too. You know, they should open their mouths too, and not necessarily in the way I think that white people are prone to talk, which is first and loudest, but maybe just be there with words of support for people, you know, the people that are experiencing the things that they're experiencing. You don't necessarily need to be like the leader of this fucking movement because you don't like, you're not right for the role, but
Right.
you know, we're going to go in
Exactly.
a different direction. Thank you so much for coming in and auditioning, but you can be there and you can be supportive. And I think that it's like, it's not just black athletes that need to speak up. I think it's like and owners and coaches, and it's like, everybody's got to be singing off the same hymn sheet, man, because you're all making money off the same fucking thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Exactly. No, we'll say we'll leave it at that. So I want to get back to something else I saw on Twitter regarding Bill Russell. So obviously we know he wear the number 6. He had, you know, his jersey has been sold even at the pro shop now at TD Garden. So someone's making the case for now his jersey to be universally retired. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if there's anybody in basketball that should have a universal retirement, it should be Bill Russell. You can make the case for Kobe, I think, and like sort of what he's posthumously meant to the culture and like how tragic it was the way that he died, you know, like it wasn't just, I mean, I'm not saying it's good when anyone dies, but obviously everyone has to. So you want to be 88 and like die of old age. You don't want to like be with your daughter in a fucking helicopter crash, you know? So
Right.
I think that for what he did for basketball, for what he did for the culture, like we've talked about, I think it makes complete sense to universally retire his jersey. And I think that if we're very careful about that, and I think that if we really pick and choose like who we do that with, I think you can actually make a real statement. I think if you start handing out that superlative to people that aren't Bill Russell or of the Bill Russell sort of, you know, level, you know what I mean? Like the kind of the thing we've been talking about this whole time. I think then you can keep that as a very valid and cool message as to why, because then people will always know about Bill Russell, but it'll preserve the idea of teaching. When you teach your kid about basketball, you teach your kid about Bill. So I think that would be fucking cool if that happened, to be honest with you.
Right. Because I mean,
what about you?
Yeah, because some people was like, well, he's not Jackie Robinson because he wasn't the first. Well, Jackie Robinson wasn't the first either. He was the most famous.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
So,
that's a little apples and oranges, isn't it? Like,
I'm saying that's what people were saying though. Like,
yeah,
but it's like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
but I'm like,
I get why
Jackie
they say that, but
Jackie wasn't the first either, but it's like Jackie, April 15th, 1947. Once again, the fact that I can remember that in my brain forever changed baseball. So, but yes, but shout out to Buck O'Neil, shout out to Satchel Paige, like, Kansas City Marlins, shout out to the Negro Leagues. I get that. There was other people that came and did the thing first, but Jackie Robinson, because he played in Brooklyn, played in New York, played at Ebbets Field, and made it what it was. But and once again, it was well deserved. So let's chill on that. It was well deserved. But I just hate that it took for him to pass away to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know LeBron has made number 6 famous because he wore number 6 down in Miami. Won championships down there from coming back in 23. I get that. Hell, Miami has 23 retired in their arena for Jordan. Like, to me, like Jordan's another number that should be universally retired as well. Because he is the Wayne Gretzky of the NBA. Let's be honest.
I agree.
And I think
it's almost silly when you see guys at 23 now, though, right? It's like you're almost like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, there's no. I mean, I can't think of another player that made 23 iconic.
Yeah.
And once again, I mean, that's one of the things for the day. But I'm like, we think about the 90s. The next guy that I can think about that was even decent wearing 23 was Mitch Richmond. And yeah, he was a 2-time All-Star, but he wasn't near what Jordan was. He was a great 2 guard for a while, but he wasn't that guy. But
But
once
like,
again, I don't want to get
if
that rabbit hole.
if
but,
Jason
you know?
Tatum was like, I want 23, you'd be like, dude, don't do that thing. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
no,
Like, don't
stay-
do that thing. You're fine.
You're number zero for life. You're good. Like I said, and made us forget about Walter. So Avery Bradley for that matter. You're good. But no, I like I said, I just hate that it took for him to pass away.
Yeah.
For that conversation to even arise, and I think it's like, yo, he did so much, but that's what I'm saying. It just ties back to now he's getting all this love later in life, and now that he's passed away. Yeah. It's like all these stories are coming, but like he did this, he did that. Like a story I heard, and I thought this was hilarious. I know you enjoyed this. That's why I was waiting to bring this up. So apparently, this was 1965. Will Chamberlain in his heyday, killing it in Philadelphia. The original Warriors before they went to San Francisco.
That's right. That's where he's at. That's where he had his 100-point game. They still, that's still a Golden State Warriors record now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's technically the franchise. So that belongs to the Golden State Warriors, which is crazy. But sorry, go on.
Right, that's wild. Yeah. So Will Chamberlain has signed a 3-year deal for $100,000, which I mean, and now it sounds like
that's you money in the 1960s.
Yeah. But I'm like, that's I mean, dog, 30 racks in 1965. He was out here living. Okay.
Yeah, he was, because he was flying to LA and wearing fucking mink coats, and he was with like 3 chicks, and he was rolling into nightclubs like a fucking boss. Like, that must have been some money, because like, he was
he was. I mean, when a house was $2,500 in the 60s, like,
you got 5 of them.
Yeah, exactly. You can buy 5 houses. You good. So he gets that. So I guess Bill walks into the office and is like, yo, I'm not coming back unless I get at least $1 more. So what does Red do? Okay, 3 years, 100,001. It's like, and he signs the deal, and he goes on. And I mean, we saw the same thing with when Shaq left for Orlando.
Yeah,
Alonzo got 7 years, 120. And then I think they gave Shaq 7 years, 121. He was like, okay, coming to LA, you know what I'm saying?
Shaq was all about his fucking bag, though. People forget.
Oh, for sure. And he should have been. As he should have been.
Yeah, for sure. But that man knew how to make his money, though, for sure. He wasn't fucking around on that front.
Not at all. Even to this day. And I love him for that. But no, that was always a funny story to me. Another one that I think about, too, this was like the NBA. NBA started doing award shows after the season. And so, they giving out the awards. And then, so Bill Russell gets a Lifetime Achievement Award, I think, in 2017, 2018. And so Kareem's up there, Hakeem Olajuwon's up there, Shaq's up there. I think Magic and who else was up there?
The Bill Russells of their generation.
So he whispers, he's like, I would get your ass. and the hot mic picks it up. And everyone just fell out laughing. So like, and he just really was a clown. And, because Kevin Garnett talked about it too, I guess there was a story with them too. Like I don't know, after they won or before they won, he was just like, yeah. He said, man, you're one of my favorite players. And Kevin Garnett was like, mm-hmm. He was like, he said, you be out here trying to prank people. He said, no, man, you're really one of my favorite players, man. He said, you make me proud on a regular basis, man. So I think that was just cool to see that interaction, because him and KG were really close. I think behind the scenes, and we saw it when they won the championship. He said, "I got my own, man. I got my own." It was like he was talking to his grandfather. I got my own, Pop. I got my own. So
right?
That's exactly how it felt. So
I mean, like, I got 11.
Right. He's like, listen, I got 10
more than you can get to the parties I go to.
But that's so crazy to think about. Bird won 3. I think Havlicek has 8.
Yeah,
Cousy has 8 because he was he retired early. Yeah, Sam Jones has 8. Satch has 8. Heisen has 8. I
don't know though, because I give Tommy a ring for the 08 announcements.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so he had 9. Okay, cool. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, actually, that's the case. We can give Heisen 11 too, because Heisen went 2 as a coach too. He was coach.
Because he was coach.
Yeah, 2 as a coach. Yeah, so he has 11. He has 11.
I think actually the Tommy Heinsohn record is, I think that he's been involved with the Celtics in some way, shape, or form for all 18 banners or some shit, crazy. Like some crazy shit like that. So that's fucking bananas. Like that guy. I miss that guy too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I guess the last one left is Cousy. I think everyone has passed away, because Havlicek passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Sam Jones. Well, Casey Jones, one of Jones passed. Casey Jones passed away too.
But Cousy's still knocking around though, right?
No, He made a comment about Redick.
Right. He was like, "Fuck JJ Redick."
What has he done? Jay West got on his ass too. So I thought that was hilarious.
Listen, I mean, I get it. I feel like if you put JJ Redick in a time machine and went back to the fucking 1800s or whatever, and Bob Cousy's dribbling a fucking basketball with one hand, he's probably fucking lighting him up. I get that. But if you take Bob Cousy and you take him as an embryo and you make him born in like fucking 1990, and then you train him in basketball in the way that you train everybody else in basketball, and he like gets to fucking learn how to do all that shit, and you give him like food that doesn't have like, I don't fucking know what they were making shit out of back then. Rusty iron.
Cousy was dribbling around. He was dribbling around people in the 50s.
You also couldn't pick the ball up. Like you weren't allowed to turn your wrist when you dribbled. I mean, I know this is getting into like some basketball nerd level stuff, but you know, the reason that they make fun of players in those highlights because they're dribbling like this, which is essentially what I look like when I dribble fucking basketball, but they're dribbling like this, you know, and they're letting it like bounce into their hand. And like, obviously when we're taught to dribble basketball, you palm it a little bit, you try to take it, you know, and you try to give it its own sort of like centrifugal force in your hand and go with it a little bit and put it back down. And that lets players now kind of do all this crazy shit. They weren't allowed. It was like a rule. They couldn't turn their hand up like that because that was like, you know, holding the ball. That was a travel. You know, you were holding the ball. So that's why they fucking look like this, just for everybody's like reference. I know I don't have an excuse.
For those that's watching it on YouTube, right? Yeah, exactly. No, that's hilarious. So
I'm just saying, like, eras are different. It's a silly conversation.
No, yeah, no, so totally. But we'll still have it. We'll have it another point.
We'll have it because we're right.
Right.
I'm not saying it's silly when people are saying it because they're fucking wrong.
Right. Exactly. So just any final words on, you know, his legacy and, you know, just your thoughts about him overall. So.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, like I said, I just think it's cool as fuck that he was a Celtic. You know, I'm sorry for the trouble that he had here for obvious reasons. I think that I'm really proud to say that we've had some people in our organization and on our team that were great basketball players, but also great men. And I think to sort of be able now to turn around and say to the players that play for our organization, yeah, maybe you had some trouble here and this shit happened and LeBron says this or whatever, but look, this is what he accomplished. This is who he was. And these are the things he was doing when he was also fucking dominating in basketball. So that's what you're here to live up to. You're not here to live up to anything else. You're not here to live up to old black and white footage of people dunking basketballs. You're here to live up to who he was as a man. That's what that statue means. That's what his legacy means. That's what it'll mean if, you know, we universally retire his jersey. It's yes, he was a great basketball player and you know, you can't take that away from him, but like who he was as a person, I think was profoundly more important. And I think that's the legacy he leaves and we should be so lucky.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, a great player, a great activist, a great human being. But Russell, we thank you for the 13 years. We thank you for the life that you lived overall on and off the court. And like I said, you're a Celtic, Celtics for life. And once again, we're forever grateful for the impact that you left, not only on this organization, but, you know, in this world as a whole. So for DK Sizzle, I'm Hollywood Rayshawn Buchanan, and we will see you next time.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks. What did you do on your last Saturday night?
Did you hear something?
Toilet paper.
There's nada. The reserves have gone dry. People are hoarding it. I should have done that.
They're all out of hand sanitizer at my Target.
Mark, when did you last watch the news?
We are getting reports of forced quarantines in China, Japan, and now Italy.
You're cutting onions in half and putting them around your apartment.
Yes, exactly. It kills the COVID.
Excuse me?
Let's go, get in.
Vamos, rápido.
Have you ever driven one of these?
Never.
I'll drive, ladies.
I've got the keys.
Excuse me, I'm lost. I'm looking for my wife. I got turned around.
Join me, Eric Roberts, Jennifer Elise Cox, and Ed Asner for The Last Saturday Night, an Electrocast podcast. You'll love it. Electrocast. Electrocast.